Translator, Reverie. Henyi. Brother-in-law, you must tread carefully upon the rivers and lakes. Shushu Ran has also altered his path toward the mystery realm, and he has already spread word that he will personally deal with you. Best that you restrain your steps for several days before setting out. Li Fengyu soon appeared before Ling Han, yet the price of his cheap chatter was the fierce glare of his elder sister. While Hu Nu and Jushuan regarded him with clear displeasure, Ling Han waved a hand lightly and said, "Firstly, I am not your sister's husband. Secondly, why should I avoid that Shushu Ran? Are you truly so lacking in confidence in me?" Li Fengyu clasped his fists together and said, "No, it's not that I lack confidence. But when two fierce tigers clash within the mountains, one of them is bound to bleed. I'm merely thinking for your sake. Brother-in-law, wait until the day our strength overwhelms his, then we'll give that fellow a proper beating." Ling Han sighed softly and said, "In the future, don't say you know a craven and cowardly fellow like me." "What? How am I cowardly?" Li Fengyu cried out hurriedly, his face filled with grievance. "When we faced Yuan Chenghe before, wasn't I the one who rushed out first?" "Very well, a true man does not boast of past glory," Ling Han said with a faint smile. "You do possess some courage. Still, I truly wish to witness the strength of this Shushu Ran." Within the same tier of cultivation, he had yet to encounter a rival worthy of the name, and he sincerely hoped this Shushu Ran could stir his fighting spirit. Li Fengyu's expression immediately darkened. He had clearly been advising Ling Han to avoid conflict with Shushu Ran, so how had it turned into him fanning the flames instead? Dong Linger and Yao Huiyu are not people to be underestimated either, Jushuan said solemnly. "Over the past few days, I've inquired about them. Dong Linger is the most outstanding genius of the current generation in the Cloud Phoenix sect, yet she conducts herself with extreme restraint. If not for the incident where someone attempted to harass her while she was training outside, drawing out a spiritual infant-tier expert who was instead slain by her blade, it's possible her name would still be unknown to the world even now." "She killed a spiritual infant tier?" Ling Han said. To him, it sounded like nothing particularly rare. "Yes. At the time, she was only at the Flower Blossom tier, while that spiritual infant tier warrior was a veteran expert who had been famous for over 100 years, and had surely already reached the peak stage of the spiritual infant tier." Jushuan said gravely, "Another supreme prodigy capable of battling beyond her realm, one who could even cross an entire major tier. And what of Yao Hui Yue? He doesn't seem quite so monstrous, does he?" Ling Han asked with a smile. "He indeed doesn't seem so," Jushuan replied. "But the Heaven Sword Sect's #1 genius is not Yao Hui Yue, but rather a freak who has never stepped beyond the sect gates. Rumor says he has been cultivating continuously within the Heaven Sword Sect's Sword Bathing Spring, just like Shushu Ran." Jushuan did not possess Hu Nu's freakish martial talent, yet she displayed remarkable charisma and discernment. Through her efforts, she had uncovered many hidden secrets, aiding Ling Han in this manner. Ling Han's interest was immediately piqued, and he asked, "What is his name?" "Zhang Mo. People call him the Small Sword Emperor," Jushuan replied. "Small Sword Emperor?" Ling Han felt a slight shock stir within him. To be granted the title of Small Sword Emperor was no trivial honor. 10,000 years ago, there had been a Sword Emperor who was truly a peerless genius, comprehending the Sword Heart while still at the Heaven tier. Yet according to Feng Po Yun, Sword Heart could only normally be formed upon reaching the Shattering Void tier. Of course, there were exceptions. For instance, Ling Han's teacher at Huyang Academy, the one known as the Great Good for Nothing, had never passed through the stages of Sword Chi or Sword Ray, yet was already only a single step away from Sword Heart. Clearly, the Sword Emperor had also been such an exception, grasping the Sword Heart at the Heaven tier, and perhaps even earlier. His talent had been nothing short of astonishing. The Heaven Sword Sect was truly overflowing with talents. Yao Huiyu claimed to be the world's second greatest sword, while Zhang Mo was called the Small Sword Emperor. Ling Han had yet to meet Zhang Mo, but Yao Huiyu himself was already extraordinarily gifted. If Zhang Mo was even more monstrous than him, then he would undoubtedly be a formidable opponent. The Heaven Sword Sect, the Absolute Saber Sect, and the Cloud Phoenix Sect all possess outstanding disciples. It would be foolish to believe the Earth Dragon sect and the Azure Thunder sect do not possess their own monsters. The time to settle accounts after 10,000 years draws near, and the martial path is entering a golden age where geniuses bloom like flowers, Ling Han said. As for the Earth Dragon sect, their supreme genius is called Jia Ming. He is said to be extremely bloodthirsty and is currently cultivating in remote mountains, Zhu Xuan'er said. Ling Han nodded and said, I've heard this name before. Back when Wenren Qianshan had appeared, the crowd had discussed animatedly, and Jia Ming's name had been mentioned with great fear. A person within the Azure Thunder sect calls himself the Son of Thunder. His true name is unknown, but it's rumored that his talent surpasses even Lang Yatian's, Zhu Xuan'er continued. Ling Han chuckled softly and said, Compared to the deep foundations of the 5 great sects, these things are nothing but minor waves. Even during the era when the martial arts environment had been declining, shattering void tier elites had still emerged from the 5 great sects, and such individuals were undoubtedly people of supreme talent. With 10,000 years of accumulation layered upon the aid of time liquid, their foundations were simply beyond imagination. No need to fear. Niu can defeat them all, Hu Niu said sweetly. Everyone burst into laughter, yet Ling Han nodded. Once Hu Niu reached the shattering void tier, with this little girl's monstrous nature, she truly might sweep aside the elites of every path. After more than 10 days of travel, they finally arrived at Wisp City. This was the place where the Purple Moon Empire and the 5 great sects confronted each other directly. Outside the city, the two sides had already clashed in several fierce battles. The army of the Purple Moon Empire was powerful, while the 5 great sects possessed countless elites and held the advantage in individual strength. In the end, the Purple Moon Empire's army had been halted here. The Purple Moon Empire still had 4 kings that had yet to be excavated, while the 5 great sects might not have yet unleashed their true, hidden foundations. At present, Wisp City still belonged to the 5 great sects, while the Purple Moon Empire's army remained stationed outside the city. This great army was under the command of Flame King, but Flame King himself and several high-ranking generals had already entered the historic site. The 5 great sects had also dispatched a large number of experts into the same place. In the outside world, the 4 kings who had come into existence could rely upon the power of the nation to greatly amplify their combat strength. Yet within the historic site, that might no longer hold true. After all, that place was not territory belonging to the Purple Moon Empire, so the power of the nation could not take effect. Ling Han stood atop the city walls and gazed outward. What lay before him was the historic site, a vast lake. Or rather, what had once been a vast lake, now it had transformed into an enormous pit, so deep that its bottom could not be seen. The Purple Moon Empire's great army was stationed in a circle 10 miles around this massive pit. Although the king who had once guarded the place had already departed, the entire army still maintained strict discipline without the slightest sign of disorder. Within the city gathered numerous martial artists from across the world. At that moment, they were forming parties and alliances, searching for companions whose strength roughly matched their own before entering the historic site together. If one's companions were too strong, then should treasures appear, they would simply end up doing all the work for others. If they were too weak, then they would only become burdens. Naturally, Ling Han's group had no need to form any such alliance. When they arrived before the massive pit, they happened to see another group arriving at the same moment. Leading them was the graceful and elegant Wenren Qianshan. It's Brother Ling. Wenren Qianshan greeted with a slight bow, lowering her stance in courtesy. Fairy Qianshan, I am Li Fengyu. I have spoken to you 37 times at the academy, and you replied to me 3 times. Li Fengyu immediately rushed forward, his expression filled with eager anticipation. Wenren Qian merely maintained a composed and reserved demeanor, clearly uninterested in Li Fengyu. She turned her gaze to Ling Han and said, Brother Ling, shall we explore the historic site together? All right. Li Fengyu immediately answered in excitement. He then looked toward Ling Han with a hopeful gaze, his expression pitiful and pleading. Reverie. Enyi Ling Han silently shook his head within his heart. Ling Fengyu appeared somewhat delusional, for the other party did not even cast him a glance. Nevertheless, he still nodded and said, "Okay." In any case, there were already several more people here. So what difference would a few more make? Wenrenchen. Qian revealed a sweet smile. She herself was also a proud person by nature, and her suggestion of joining forces with Ling Han was not to curry favor with him, but rather to mutually complement one another's strengths. In her mind, if the two supreme elites joined hands, they would surely be unstoppable, at least among the younger generation. "Please, Brother Ling." "Please, Lady Wenren." The two parties were just about to descend into the enormous pit when Ling Han suddenly paused slightly, his gaze drifting toward the distant horizon. A figure was rapidly approaching from afar, moving with the momentum of a savage ancient beast. Wherever his feet landed, the ground rumbled violently, cracks spreading outward in all directions like spider webs. Wenren Qian's delicate face instantly darkened, her expression turning displeased. The people standing beside her immediately paled, and even their bodies began to tremble uncontrollably. "Jia Ming!" Someone finally stammered with a trembling voice. "Peng!" At the very moment those words were spoken, the approaching figure had already rushed forward and unleashed a punch. The speed of the strike was astonishingly swift, so fast that even Ling Han and Wenren Qian could not intervene in time. Instantly, the person who had just spoken was blasted away, blood spraying through the air as his body was sent flying. He had actually been killed with a single punch. The man who had come from afar stood still. He was a young man who appeared no more than 21 or 22 years old, yet his figure was massive and towering. His upper body was bare, while only a piece of beast hide was wrapped around his lower half. He stood barefoot upon the earth, and his long, dark hair cascaded over his shoulders, fluttering wildly in the wind, giving him a bold and unrestrained appearance. Every inch of his body was packed with bulging muscles, protruding as if carved from stone itself. His eyes flashed like lightning, and a savage, bloodthirsty aura radiated from him, making him resemble a ferocious beast. Coupled with his stature, which stood a full head taller than ordinary people, he exuded an overwhelming, oppressive presence. "How dare you call my name directly? Courting death!" The young man said coldly, his voice icy like that of a god of slaughter. "Jiaming, the most talented genius among the younger generation of the Earth Dragon sect. Jiaming, you've gone too far." Wenren Qian rebuked him sharply. One of her own subordinates had been beaten to death, so she naturally had to demand justice for him. Otherwise, how could she still be qualified to lead them? What subordinate would continue to follow a leader who could not even protect her own people? Jiaming's gaze shifted toward Wenren Qian. A smile appeared upon his beast-like face as he said, Qian, I've finally caught up to you. I'm not too late, am I?" Then he glanced at the others, and his face instantly turned gloomy again. A sinister glint flickered within his eyes as he said, "What are you good-for-nothing still standing here for? Hurry up and get lost." "Jiaming, you've killed one of my men." Wenren Qian raised her voice. "Just a useless waste." "I killed him, and that's all." Jiaming grinned. "Qian, now that you have my protection, what use do you have for these useless people?" Although he was smiling, his natural appearance was vicious and fierce, and this smile did not feel cordial in the slightest. It was like an ordinary person facing a lion. When the lion opened its mouth, no one would think it was expressing friendliness. Instead, they would only think that it was about to devour them. Seeing that everyone was still standing there, Jiaming's expression darkened again as he coldly said, 3 breaths. If anyone still remains within my field of vision after 3 breaths, I will kill them. Although everyone felt Jiaming's behavior was tyrannical, what made them feel even more despair was his terrifying strength. He was also the most outstanding genius of the Earth Dragon sect's current generation. Even if someone here were stronger than him, would they dare to kill him? Would they not fear the retaliation of the Earth Dragon sect? Jiaming could kill people without a single care, but they could not. From the very beginning, they stood in an inferior position. Not to mention the enormous difference in battle prowess. The moment they attacked, it would likely become a situation of certain death. Thus, one by one, they retreated, deciding to abandon Wenren Qian, the source of calamity. On one hand, Wenren Qianqian was indeed an outstanding genius among the younger generation. On the other hand, she possessed beauty akin to a celestial fairy. Naturally, men would harbor certain thoughts in their hearts. Before encountering Jiaming, these geniuses held themselves in extremely high regard and believed they would not lose, so they had gathered around her. But now that Jiaming stood before them, their hearts trembled, and they did not even have the courage to fight. Beauties were wonderful, but they were not more valuable than one's own life. Besides, Wenren Qian had never promised them anything, so to throw away their lives for this would simply be foolish. Jiaming, Wenren Qian angrily rebuked him, her hands trembling, not from fear, but from pure fury. Throughout the entire scene, only Ling Han's group did not retreat. Zhu Xuan and the others were clearly following Ling Han's lead. Since Ling Han had not retreated, naturally they would not retreat either. Although Li Fengyu very much wanted to quietly slip to the side and keep a low profile, Jiaming's presence was so overwhelming that it felt almost tangible, as though he had been locked onto by a savage ancient beast. The pressure was unbearable, and a layer of cold sweat quickly formed on his back. Jiaming's gaze swept across Ling Han and the others. When his eyes fell upon Zhu Xuan, he could not help but pause slightly as his gaze lit up. He raised his finger and pointed toward her as he said, "This girl stays. The others all get lost." His gaze lingered upon Zhu Xuan without the slightest attempt to conceal the possessive desire within his eyes. He was like a lion king ruling the grasslands, and every lioness belonged to him. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Get lost? That's a bit difficult. Who knew? Do you know how to get lost?" Niu doesn't know. Hu Niu spread out her hands innocently. Ling Han turned his gaze back toward Jiaming and said, "Look, no one here knows how to do it. How about you demonstrate it for us?" Jiaming's gaze finally shifted away from Zhu Xuan. He looked at Ling Han, and after a moment, he said, "You are very strong. Should I feel honored by your praise?" Ling Han replied with a smile. "But within the same age group, no one is my match," Jiaming said arrogantly, his confidence overflowing. "I can take you in as a follower. If you follow me in the future, you will have the opportunity to roam a broader world." Ling Han dug his finger into his ear as if cleaning it and said, "How arrogant. I already thought I was quite arrogant, but now I've met someone even more arrogant than me. This makes me feel very uncomfortable. Who knew? Someone has made me feel terrible. What should we do? Beat him, torture him, trample him." Hu Niu waved her fists fiercely, resembling a tiny tiger showing its claws. Ling Han burst into loud laughter and said, "All right, then it's settled." Jiaming's expression turned cold and baleful. As a terrifying aura spread from his body, he resembled a lion that had just been provoked awake, causing chills to run through people's hearts. He said indifferently, "Rejecting my goodwill will only bring about your own destruction." "Brother-in-law, can I go hide on the side first? I think an old illness has suddenly flared up, and it's a bit hard for me to breathe," Li Fengyu whispered in a low voice. "Shoo!" Hu Niu kicked out and sent Li Fengyu flying. "You disgrace Niu, too useless." Ling Han gazed straight ahead and also said indifferently, "Just as you said, within the same age group, no one is qualified to act arrogantly in front of me." "Ha!" Jiaming burst into loud laughter, his black hair dancing wildly in the wind. He clenched his fists, and his bones crackled like thunder, causing Zhu Xuan and Li Zixian to turn pale. His aura was simply far too powerful.